Hello, hello. Hi, everybody. The Thursday poll question at Smerconish.com. Should Ukraine be given missiles that can reach Moscow? Down and dirty, straight to the point, simple question, very straightforward, as promised from yesterday in my conversation with Admiral Stavridis. Thank you first to my friends at Parks Casino and Play Gun Lake. Summertime is here. It's not only here, it's flying by. Like, oh my gosh, we are more than halfway through the month of July, which is frightening. The beach, the boat, the lake, the great outdoors. I hope your summer is going well, wherever you might be vacationing. If you've got your device with you and you're in select states that I'll reference in a moment, you can enjoy casino action and sports betting wherever you are all summer long with the BetParks app and the Play Gun Lake apps. Live betting on sports, always better on the BetParks and Play Gun Lake apps. You can bet player performance, game props, and more. Whether your favorite team wins or not, there's always another way for you to win with BetParks and Play Gun Lake, the only apps that I ever use and recommend to bet on sports and to play all my favorite casino games in the palm of my hand. By the way, check out the new games on the BetParks app. They include Huff and Morepuff, Mega Fire Blaze, Dwarves and Goblins, the Flintstones plus Money Horse. You can bet blackjack, baccarat, all the hot online slots, and the sports gaming. There's something for everybody, and wherever you might be, in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, or Maryland for BetParks, Michigan for Play Gun Lake, as long as you've got your phone with you, you can be engaged, okay? 21 and in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, or Maryland for BetParks, that's the requirement. You've got to be 21, and in Michigan for Play Gun Lake, you love to play, you play to win. BetParks and Play Gun Lake. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. I'm not going to lie to you. If yesterday's Wednesday poll result had been the reverse of what it actually was, I'd have been bummed. I got a lot of skin in this game. The poll question: should the nation's millions of registered independent voters be able to vote in primary elections? Huge vote, by the way, 37,631. 87.03% of us said yes. Let independents have their say. Why was this the poll question yesterday? It was the poll question yesterday because the prior day, on Tuesday, a legal action, a petition actually, was filed before the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court, in which I'm the lead plaintiff, meaning I'm one of four plaintiffs, but my name comes first, which is kind of cool because in the caption of the case, it's my name that gets reflected. And we are seeking to overturn a 1937 law in Pennsylvania, declaring it, we hope, unconstitutional, and allowing independents to then have a say. The 1.4 million of us in Pennsylvania, 30 million who get closed out across the country, according to Jeremy Gruber from Open Primaries. By the way, there's a piece today in the newsletter. The announcement of the petition got a tremendous amount of coverage. Thank you to the Associated Press, because their coverage of it was picked up in newspapers all across the country. The Pennsylvania Capital Star and the reporter John Cole, a story in today's newsletter at Smerconish.com, I thought had one of the most, if not the most complete analyses of what this is all about. It begins this way: with Independence Hall in Philadelphia serving as the backdrop, a group announced on Tuesday they have filed a petition asking the state Supreme Court to rule primary election laws in Pennsylvania are unconstitutional. And then there's a quote from David Thornburg, who was a guest on yesterday's radio program, chair of the Ballot PA Action. That's a coalition aimed at overturning the state's closed primary laws. He said, "We're speaking to the 7 justices of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, and we aim to convince them that excluding independent voters from primary elections is not just unfair in some vague moral sense, but that it violates the Pennsylvania Constitution." Thornburg, along with Michael Smerconish, a longtime political television and radio host, Jeffrey Doty, the owner of a grocery store, and Rachel Shannock, a physical therapist, these are the 4 plaintiffs, filed a King's Bench petition which goes directly to the state's highest court. Pennsylvania is home to approximately 1.4 million people registered as independent, unaffiliated, or members of a third party is one of at least 9 states that doesn't allow independent voters to participate in primary elections. That means to cast a ballot in a party's primary, a voter must be registered with that particular political party. And then a quote from Shane Inspector, who was also on yesterday's program. If he's the attorney, one of the attorneys who is representing the 4 of us, if we are successful, then the current statute will be declared unconstitutional and therefore it will be non-functional. And that will mean immediately that independents can vote in primaries. Republican, Democratic, Green, Constitutional, Libertarian, whatever. The legislature would be free to fashion other potential schemes with respect to voting, but such a scheme would have to protect the right of independents to vote in primary elections. And then Shannon goes on to note that at present, it's around 15% of the state's electorate registered not as a member of one of the 2 major parties. In 1937, and I think this is really important, in 1937, when this restriction was put on the books, the number of independents was only 3%. And then finally, reinforcing the point, Smerconish, a Republican turned independent, cited a Gallup poll that said 43% of Americans self-identify as independent. And then there's a quote from me, which I repeated on air yesterday: when independents can't vote in primary elections, I think we all suffer because our missing voice is one of moderation. We live in very polarizing times, and I firmly believe that when independent voices are excluded from the nomination process, we foster a rise of extremes at both ends of the political spectrum. There it is. I mean, there's more to that recap. I don't want to read the whole thing to you, but you can tell it's pretty comprehensive, right? So, yeah, I'm thrilled about the outcome of yesterday's result. Now, today's going to be very interesting because every time, for the duration of the 3.5-year Russia-Ukraine war, and I don't think that there's an exception to what I'm about to say. Every time we've asked questions, and we've asked a lot of questions about Russia and Ukraine, but any time that the question has been one of what should happen next and what level of support should we offer, the United States offer to Ukraine, the most hawkish response always wins the day. Will that be the case with this poll question? We'll soon find out. Should Ukraine be given missiles that can reach Moscow? President Trump told reporters on Tuesday that Ukraine should not target Moscow with military attacks and that the U.S. was not looking to give long-range missiles to Kyiv. No, they shouldn't target Moscow, he said, as he was departing from the White House for a trip, interestingly, to Pennsylvania. The Financial Times reported earlier on Tuesday that Trump had asked Zelensky during a recent phone call if Ukraine could hit Moscow if provided long-range weaponry. Yesterday, Admiral Stavridis was on the program. Admiral James Stavridis, people who listen to me on a regular basis are certainly familiar with him, former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, our go-to. We're so fortunate. You know, I have only 2 benchmarks on the program. Oftentimes with TC, we'll do the suggested poll questions of the day, and we enjoy that, and it allows us to cover the landscape. It's like a nice device to get input from the listeners, to contemplate their suggested poll questions, and also to cover the landscape of what people are buzzing about, which is why we love doing it. So we do that, but the only real benchmarks we have, the regularly standing appointments, Mark Halpern and Admiral Stavridis. Halpern on a Wednesday in the second hour of the program, like clockwork. Admiral Stavridis, oftentimes on a Tuesday, but because of his schedule, you know, he's literally all over the globe and in demand, so we take him when we can get him. But he was on the first hour of yesterday's program, and I raised this subject of him. I said, you know, this is potentially the poll question on Thursday. And he had a very interesting, nuanced response. Should Ukraine be given missiles that can reach Moscow? His answer is yes. However, he doesn't want the capital, Moscow, being targeted by Kyiv because he said it would involve civilian death and that would be a war crime. Well, why then does he want them to have that kind of range? He wants them to have that kind of range because he wants them to be able to hit military installations that are distant from Ukraine. So he's a yes vote. And then I had the conversation with him about the incrementalism that has been a hallmark of our support of Ukraine, how initially it's like, they want X, but we're not going to give them X. And then 3 months later, 6 months later, 9 months later, we give them what they were initially looking for. And Admiral Stavridis just sort of rattled off how we've been late at every step of the way. And initially it was the Javelin and Stinger missiles. Should we give them the Javelin missiles? Should we give them the tanks? I think it was the Abrams tank. Should we give them the HIMARS, those missiles? He then said the F-16s, which Admiral Stavridis called the Swiss Army knife of the battlefield, insofar they can do everything. Remember as kids, we all had a Swiss Army knife? Do you still have a Swiss Army knife? I do. I don't carry it around, but I have one. But that they're offensive, they're defensive, the F-16s. And he believes that if we had loaded up the F-16s and trained their pilots initially, then Ukraine perhaps would be in a different position than it is today. But the Javelins and the Stingers, the tanks, the HIMARS, the F-16s, and now the conversation is about the Patriot defensive missile system. Every time we eventually give it to them. And it seems like the calculation is one of, well, we really want to help Ukraine, but we don't want to piss off Putin because he's got nukes. And then ultimately we give them what they wanted. What if we had pushed all the chips onto the table from the get-go? I don't know the outcome to that question. I don't know the outcome to that question, but that's what's on my mind in asking this. By the way, I was just reading from the print edition of the Times today. President Trump has said, 50 days. He's giving Russia 50 days. And it seems like the reaction from Russia is a harumph. Like, yeah, okay. Once you told us it was 24 hours, another time you told us it was 100 days. Now it's 50 days, whatever. Quote, Russia appears unrattled by President Trump's new ultimatum aimed at ending the war in Ukraine, retreating to a long-held position that it will weather any sanctions and continue pursuing its war goals in Ukraine, regardless of outside pressure. Russian commentators have also questioned whether Mr. Trump really has reversed course and is fully committed to supporting Ukraine. The U.S. president issued a 50-day ultimatum for Moscow to come to a peace deal before implementing penalties drafted by Congress on Russia and its trading partners. He also agreed to supply weapons to Ukraine to be paid for by Europe. Truly the art of the deal. We are now going to our defense apparatus. You could say our military industrial complex is going to make money selling these weapons to NATO, and NATO is then going to give them to Ukraine. And how are they going to pay for them? NATO, because Trump has forced their hand to increase, I should say, their contributions annually to NATO as a share of GDP. Okay, that's a lot. That is a lot. Bottom line, poll question today, should Ukraine be given missiles that can reach Moscow? I'm a yes vote for all the reasons that Admiral Stavridis set forth yesterday. I thought he articulated it beautifully. So please go to Smerconish.com and vote on today's poll question. And thank you for yesterday's poll result, because I'd be upset if it had gone in a different direction. Okay, thanks, everybody. Thank you if you're watching on YouTube. Like and subscribe and set yourself up for notifications, and have a wonderful day.